Hi, everybody. Going live. We're reading Everyone Needs a Miracle. He Still Moves Stones by Max Lucado. And you can see, I love this picture. You just see the stone here and the barely visible cave, the darkness and the trees and the stone moving away and the light coming from inside the cave. Okay, we're going to be reading chapter 20, and it's called Listless Christianity When Being Good is Not Enough. And as usual, it starts with the scripture, Luke 23, verses 33 through 42. And then he wants us to concentrate on Luke 23, verse 43. So it's actually the next verse that isn't in the reading. When they came to a place called the Skull, the soldiers crucified Jesus and the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them because they don't know what they are doing." I say that a lot today about our youth. The soldiers threw lots to decide who would get his clothes. The people stood there watching, and the leaders made fun of Jesus, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's chosen one, the Christ." The soldiers also made fun of him, coming to Jesus and offering him some vinegar. They said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." At the top of the cross, these words were written, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals on a cross began to shout insults at Jesus. "Aren't you the Christ? Then save yourself and us." But the other criminal stopped him and said, "You should fear God." And fear had a different meaning back in those days. It didn't mean to be afraid of. It meant to respect. So you should respect God. You are getting the same punishment he is. We are punished justly, getting what we deserve for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And then this is what happened. And we know that Jesus said this to that thief. The next verse, Luke 23, verse 43 is, "I tell you the truth. Today you will be with me in paradise." I love that part. So she nearly missed the flight. In fact, I thought I had the row to myself. Yay! When I looked up and saw her puffing down the aisle, dragging two large bags. "I hate to fly," she blurted out as she fell into her seat. "I put off getting here as long as I can." "You almost put it off too long," I smiled. She was tall, young blonde, tan, and talkative. Her jeans were fashionably ripped at the knees, and her black boots boasted silver tips. She really did hate to fly, I learned, and the way she coped with flying was by talking. "I'm going home to see my dad. He'll really be amazed at my tan. He thinks I'm crazy living in California, me being single and all. I've got this new boyfriend. He's from Lebanon. He travels a lot, though, so I only see him on weekends, which is fine with me because that gives me the house to myself. It isn't far from the beach, and I've learned what to do when a friendly, attractive woman sits beside me. As soon as possible, I reveal my profession and marital status. It keeps us both out of trouble." "My wife hates to fly, too," I jumped in when she took a breath. "So I know how you feel, and since I'm a minister, I know a section of the Bible you might like to read as we take off." Sly one, that Max. I pulled out my Bible from my briefcase. He's got backup. And opened it to Psalm 23. For the first time, she was quiet. "The Lord is my shepherd." She read the words, then looked up with a broad smile. "I remember this," she said as the plane was taking off. "I read it when I was young." She turned to read some more. The next time she looked up, there was a tear in her eye. It's been a long time, a long, long time. She told me how she believed once. She became a Christian when she was young, but she couldn't remember the last time she'd been to church. We talked some about faith and second chances. I asked her if I could ask her a question. She said I could. Do you believe in heaven? Yeah. Do you think you'll go there? She looked away for a minute and then turned and answered confidently, yeah, I'll be in heaven. How do you know? How do I know I'm going to heaven? She grew quiet as she formulated her response. Somehow I knew what she was going to say before she said it. Could see it coming. She was going to give me her list. Everybody has one. Well, I'm basically good. I don't smoke more than a pack a day. I exercise. I'm dependable at work. And she counted each achievement on a finger. I made my boyfriend get tested for AIDS. And then you slept with him, right? Ta-da! That was her list, her qualifications. By her way of thinking, heaven could be earned by good health habits and safe sex. Her line of logic was simple. I keep the list on earth and I get this place in heaven. Now, lest we be too hard on her, let me ask you a question. What's on your list? Most of us have one. Most of us are like that girl on the plane. We think we are basically good, decent, hardworking folk. Most of us have a list to prove it. Maybe yours doesn't include cigarettes or AIDS, but you have a list. I pay my bills. I love my spouse and kids. I attend church. I'm better than Hitler. I'm basically good. That's not my list. That's my way of life. Because if you live it according to God's guidelines, some call the Ten Commandments, and Jesus' 11th commandment, you reap what you sow and you have life and have it more abundantly. That's just an abundant life. No, only Jesus can get us into heaven. There's only one way into heaven, and it ain't on our own. Most of us have a list. There's a purpose for the list to prove we are good. But there's a problem with the list. None of us is good enough. Paul made this point when he placed two short fused sticks of dynamite in the 3rd chapter of his letter to the Romans. The first is in verse 10. There is no one who always does what is right, he wrote. Not even one. No one. Not you. Not me. Not anyone. The second explosion occurs in verse 23. All have sinned and are not good enough for God's glory. Boom. So much for lists, so much for being basically good. Then how do you go to heaven? If no one is good, if no list is sufficient, if no achievements are adequate, how can a person be saved? No question is more crucial to hear Jesus answer it. Let's ponder the last encounter he had before his death, an encounter between Jesus and two criminals. All three are being crucified. Two are guilty, one is not. One might like to think that these two thieves are victims, undeserving of punishment, good men who got a bad rap, patriots dying a martyr's death. But such is not the case. Matthew dispels any such notion with just one verse. The robbers who are being crucified beside Jesus also insulted him. Matthew 27, verse 44. Tragedy reveals a person's character, and the tragedy of this crucifixion reveals that these two thieves had none. They slandered Jesus with their last breaths. Can you hear them? Voices husky with pain sneer at the Messiah. Some king of the Jews you are. Life is pretty tough on messiahs these days, eh? How about a little miracle, Galilean? Ever see nails that size in Nazareth? You'd expect it from Pharisees. You'd expect it from the crowd. Even the mocking of the soldiers isn't surprising. But from the thieves? Crucified men insulting a crucified man? It's two men with nooses on their necks ridiculing the plight of a third? Two prisoners of wars before a fire squad taunting another's misfortune? Could anyone be more blind? Could anyone be more vile? Could anyone be more shallow? No wonder these two are on the cross. Rome deems them worthy of ugly torture. Their only value to society is to serve as a public spectacle. Strip them naked so all will know that evil cannot hide. Nail their hands so all will see that wicked have no strength. Post them high so all will tell their children. That's what happens to evil men. Every muscle in their body screams for relief. Nails pulse fire through their arms. Legs contort and twist, seeking comfort. But there's no comfort on a cross. Yet even the pain of the spike won't silence their spiteful tongues. These two will die as they lived, attacking the innocent. But in this case, the innocent doesn't retaliate. The man they mocked wasn't much to look at. His body was whip-torn flesh. Over 300 whip-torns, that they had, like, they were almost like razor blades in those whips when they whipped Jesus. And they literally did tear and cut his flesh. And they took the Shroud of Turin and they put it through a 3D printer, and when the 3D printer printed out the image in 3D and they counted all the wounds, I guess they used to think there was like 150 and there was over 300 wounds. If you've ever seen a statue of the tortured Christ, oh, it's hard to look at. And he was up there hanging on the cross with them, but he had all those whip-torn flesh yanked away from the bone. His face was a mask of blood and spit, eyes puffy and swollen. King of the Jews was painted over his head. A crown of thorns pierced his scalp. His lip was split. Maybe his nose was bleeding or a tooth was loose. The man they mocked was half dead. The man they mocked was beaten. But the man they mocked was at peace. Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they are doing. Luke 23, verse 34. After Jesus' prayer, one of the criminals began to shout insults at him. Aren't you the Christ? Then save yourself and us. The heart of this thief remains hard. The presence of Christ crucified means nothing to him. Jesus is worthy of ridicule. So the thief ridicules. He expects his chorus to be harmonized from the other cross. It isn't. Instead, it is challenged. You should fear God. You are getting the same punishment he is. We are punished justly, getting what we deserve for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. Unbelievable. The same mouth that cursed Christ now defends Christ. What has happened? What has he seen since he has been on the cross? Did he witness a miracle? Did he hear a lecture? Was he read a treatise on the Trinity? No, of course not. According to Luke, all he heard was a prayer of grace, but that was enough. Something happens to a man who stands in the presence of God, and something happened to that thief. Read again his words. We are punished justly, getting what we deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong. Now, how would he know that that man had done nothing wrong? Did he really know Jesus? Or had he just heard of him? The core of the gospel in one sentence, the essence of eternity through the mouth of a crook. Am I wrong? Jesus is right. I have failed. Jesus has not. I deserve to die. Jesus deserves to live. The thief knew precious little about Christ, but what he knew was precious indeed. He knew that an innocent man was dying an unjust death with no complaint on his lips. And if Jesus can do that, he just might be who he says he is. So the thief asked for help. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. The heavy head of Christ lifts and turns, and the eye of those two meet. What Jesus sees is a naked man. I don't mean in terms of clothes. I mean in terms of charades. He has no more cover, no way to hide. His title, scum of the earth. His achievement, death by crucifixion. His reputation, criminal. His character, depraved until the last moment, till the final hour, till the last encounter. His list, until now. Tell me, what has this man done to warrant help? He has wasted his life. Who is he to beg for forgiveness? He publicly scoffed at Jesus. What right does he have to pray this prayer? Do you really want to know? The same right you have to pray yours. You see, that is you and me on the cross. Naked, desolate, hopeless, and estranged. That is us. That is us asking, in spite of what I've done, in spite of what you see. Is there any way you could remember me when we all get home? We don't boast, we don't produce our list. Any sacrifice appears silly when placed before God on a cross. It's more than we deserve, but we are desperate, so we plead, as have so many others. The cripple at the pool, Mary at the wedding, Martha at the funeral, the demoniac at Gerasene, Nicodemus at night, Peter on the sea, Jairus on the trail, Joseph at the stable, and every other human being who has dared to stand before the Son of God and admit his or her need. We, like the thief, have one more prayer, and we, like the thief, pray, and we, like the thief, hear the voice of grace. Today you will be with me in my kingdom, and we, like the thief, are able to endure the pain, knowing he'll soon take us home. That was a good one, Muggsy. The Stone Movers Gallery is chapter 21 for tomorrow. I'm glad I was able to read because I did have to go to work, and I got a nice goose chase at work as usual. Trying to find a super user that can help me get back into the glucometer machine. I know how to run the darn thing, read the darn thing, perform the tests, but you have to prove it every year. And every year they're changing the testing, or because we're leased employees, we get kicked out of the system and then they have to put us back in. It's always a rat race. It was easier when ministry was, just ministry. But now it's ministry and all the lease services. Oh, wow. Are we having fun yet in medicine? No, I'm glad to be getting out. The more the government gets involved, the more I do not like it. It's a simple fact. I will be here for all my neighbors and my friends and my family. I will help in any way I can. Anybody who comes to me for help, I'll try and help them. But I'll be fine when I get retired from government-run healthcare. Okay. Love y'all. God bless. Ending the stream. Have a good night's sleep, everyone.